Sassounian. You all know him. He is a top Armenian intellectual. He's a writer, journalist, publisher, you name it. Harut, welcome.
Thank you, Wally. Pleasure's being with you again.
Yeah, long time no see.
Right.
How is things with you?
Okay, I'm working hard and following your interviews. Very interesting.
Yes. What do you expect from Bedlisi, you know?
What do you expect? What?
From Bedlisi.
Oh, Bidlisi. Yes, I read that you're a Bidlisi like Saroyan.
Yeah, we tell everything as is. Sometimes it doesn't work, you know? So, we haven't talked for a long time. So let me put this on because, all right. I was going to ask you first question. Did you read Pashinyan biography by chance?
No, I haven't read his entire biography. I just know quite a bit about him over the years, following his different jobs and careers, but I haven't read the entire biography, but I know somewhat about his biography.
I don't know too many people in Armenia that read his biography, but that's different story. Do Armenians? I'm going to ask you tough questions. Do Armenians really deserve a country?
Well, throughout our entire history, we've been in very bad shape in terms of running a country, not just now, not just 30 years ago, but for thousands of years. We've had a shortage, desperate shortage of competent leaders. We rarely had one throughout our history, and we don't have one now.
Somehow we don't know how to run countries, you know?
Well, it's not easy running a country. It's not everybody's job. This isn't like running a shoe store or catching dogs in the street or yelling and screaming with a megaphone walking in the streets. Running a country, yes, Armenia is a small country, should be easy to manage, but unfortunately it has a million problems of all kinds, not just the war, the economy, society, immigration, being isolated from the sea, landlocked country, borders closed on both sides, Turkey and Azerbaijan. Even a good leader, a competent leader, will have a hard time running a country like this, let alone if the leader is incompetent, then it's hopeless.
Yes. It just bothers me. The reason I ask you the first question about you read the biography, seems to me most Armenians, they're really ignorant. They never even read. You hire someone to be your prime minister. A country is surrounded with enemies, and people didn't even read it. I don't know. I published just a few days ago comparing Greece prime minister to Armenian prime minister. If you look at Greece, the credential this guy has, although he is in Europe, he is member of NATO, yet he went around in the region. He created alliance with Israel, with Egypt, with Emirates, with France. He built his military. Yet in Armenia, they didn't do anything. Is it leader is important or ally is important?
Well, the first thing Armenia needs is a competent leader before needing anything else. Before the economy, before allies, before the war, before anything. Because if the leader is incompetent, even if you have all the money in the world, all the allies in the world, you will screw it up and get no benefit from it. So you have to know what you're doing. It's like putting the chairman of IBM, an incompetent person. He will drive IBM, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, into bankruptcy very quickly. So that's number one requirement for any country. Now, let me just continue from there. No leader in any country is competent enough to know every subject in the world. They may know a few subjects and some experience, which is good. But what all countries have, unfortunately, we don't have in Armenia, is the leader of the country has advisors, has ministers, experts, and anytime he needs to know something, he asks them. Of course, the leader will end up making the final decision. That's normal. But leaders have they're competent, but they have around them competent experts, advisors, who will give them the background of an issue so the leader can make a correct decision. In Armenia's case, we're in double trouble. The leader is incompetent, has zero experience in running anything except a small newspaper. And then he surrounded himself with completely incompetent, even less competent than him, ministers and advisors, and they can't help him. They can't give him any advice. On the top of it, even if, God forbid, there's one good advisor that knows something, Pashinyan ends up not listening to him. He makes all the decisions on his own. He's a one-man show. He doesn't need it for a minister. We don't have a foreign minister for 2 months now. He doesn't need other ministers. He doesn't need the parliament. He doesn't need the courts. He just decides everything. He runs the military without knowing anything about the military. That's why we're in the shape, and it's a hopeless case. Yeah, I hear you.
Dictator? Do you still hear me or you don't hear me?
No, I hear you now. Well, yeah, that's another sad part. This man came and walked in the streets, and hundreds of thousands of people got excited worldwide, not just in Armenia. And he preached tolerance and equality and democracy, and which was great. Those are great slogans, words that we all believe in. And a lot of us were very happy with a man speaking in those terms. Of course, Armenians being an emotional people, they go overboard, they go to extremes. They don't have a middle ground in any of their feelings or decisions. They went crazy over this man, hearing all these things. But more importantly, they went not crazy over him because they hated so much the previous ones that they looked at Nigol as a savior who was going to save Armenia from all these terrible earlier people that they hated. So they blindly just followed him. And that was the beginning. That's how we started. But we did, and he also said, I remember on the early days, he says, I'm going to appoint ministers and advisors based on expertise and competence, and not what side or what party they belong to, which was also a great thing to say. So he went ahead at the beginning and he appointed ministers from the ARF, from the Progress Party, and that didn't last very long. Within a couple of weeks, while he called for his supporters to come and circle the parliament and not let any member of parliament go in or go out unless they vote the way he wants them to vote. And then when he saw that these parties that his ministers came from did not vote the way he wanted, while he's standing in the street he announced that he's firing those ministers. Now, he can fire anybody he wants, but standing in the street in a demonstration, that's not the right way to run a country and fire or hire ministers. He can go back to his office, sit down, think it over, and if he wants to fire, he has the right to fire them, but not standing in a protest with tens of thousands of people surrounding him. So to continue my story, so he started on saying all the right things. People liked him, people went crazy over him. And then very shortly, initially he started contradicting himself on everything he said. He said a lot of things while he was a member of parliament. He was against Russia. He criticized Russia constantly. He was against the Russian base in Gyumri. He said he should close it down. He was against the Eurasian market that's led by Russia. He said Armenia has no business being there. We should get out. The minute he became prime minister, he started saying just exact opposite. First of all, he said that he's not going to change the foreign policy of Armenia. He's just going to deal with domestic policy. Then he started saying that he has no problem with Russia. He doesn't want to close the base. He doesn't want to get out of the Eurasian market. He also contradicted himself on the Constitution. For months and months in Parliament, he was yelling and screaming that how the Constitution is a very bad document. It was made up by Serge Sarkisian to suit his own position. So he said we should change it. But the minute he became prime minister, when they asked him about the Constitution, he said, no, we cannot change the Constitution. It's not something you change every day. Let's just live with it, work with it, and see what happens. Once again, he contradicted himself. So he did that on a million different things, which we can spend hours talking about. And then coming back to dictatorship versus democracy, the man who started talking as a Democrat, as Gandhi, as a peacemaker, very soon he started talking in a very rough, using rough language, using threats. I'm going to slam people who oppose me to the wall. I'm going to lay them down on the asphalt. And then recently during the campaign for the June 20 elections, he was on the podium repeatedly holding a hammer in his hand and threatening to smash the heads of his opponents with that hammer. And so this man who started as a dictator, which was good, very shortly, the power went to his head. As they say in an expression in English, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So he became, like you said, a dictator, unfortunately, which is very bad for Armenia. And just when we thought we had a halfway decent, tolerant Democrat leading the country, but we now have, in the last 6 months, 2 foreign ministers resigned one after another because he was taking decisions without even letting them know, forget about asking for their advice and expertise. And the other ministers, he changes constantly. The National Security Council leadership, he changes constantly. The generals he hires and fires. The defense minister he hires and fires. The country is completely out of control, and nothing good can come out with a guy who doesn't know what he's doing. He's contradicting himself. He's using very rude, threatening language that no self-respecting leader of any country, even the most backwards country, talks like that. So we don't know where we're going. And of course, on the top of all this negatives comes the disastrous defeat of the Artsakh war, defeated by Azerbaijan and Turkey. Of course, he blames it on the previous leaders, but he forgets that he's been leader for 3 years himself. And other than anything, for the military, except talking about it. He's proud to purchase some Russian jets, but he purchased the jets without any missiles, so they were useless during the war. They didn't even go to the air, this jets. So I don't know, and he keeps saying that I'm gonna stay in power to correct the problems of Armenia. How can he correct the problems of Armenia when he is the source of the problem? He's not in shape to correct anything. This is like saying that a man who sets fire to the forest, then he says, I'm going to put the fire out. He set the fire himself. How is he going to put the fire out? So basically, we have, in summary, we have two problems before we mention all the other thousands of other problems, two major problems. One, we're a small, weak country surrounded by stronger enemies who are ready to do ill to us. And that's bad enough. And there isn't much we can do about it if you're in a small country like that, weak country, defeated country. On top of it, if we had a somewhat competent leader with competent advisors, he would be able to minimize the losses, not completely change the country. He cannot. Even the competent leader cannot change the country completely, but at least he can minimize our losses 5, 10% maybe. But we have a leader, not only is not minimizing our losses, he's making it worse. Every day we wake up, there's another bad news from the border, from fighting wars by Pashinyan against the opposition. He's thrown several mayors in the south in jail. Why? Because he went to campaign there, and those mayors told their citizens, don't join his campaign. Don't go to his rallies. So he called the chief of police and told him, arrest those mayors. He has no right to tell the chief of police what to do. And the chief of police, who's a yes man, knowing that he will lose his job if he doesn't do what Pashinyan says, that's where comes the dictatorship, he goes and arrests them and throws them in jail. I mean, I don't know how we're gonna set the country straight. It's damaged so bad in every way: war, economy, bad leadership, incompetence. We were hoping that the elections will lead to a new face, new leader. Anytime you say anything against Pashinyan, people respond to you saying, so you must be for the previous leaders. My answer is, for God's sake, there are 10 million Armenians in the world. Serge Sarkisian, Kocharian, Levon Bedrosian, and Pashinyan are 4 people out of 10 million. There surely must be other people out of the 10 million who are competent enough to run a country. Just because we're against Pashinyan, it doesn't mean that we're for the previous ones. I know the previous ones very well. They had their own problems. And then we thought we got a new guy who is going to correct everything, but he made it worse. So we're hoping on the election to find somebody new, but that didn't happen because the overwhelming majority of the people are still deceived by Pashinyan with his slogans and his this democracy and all these nice words. So they voted for him. There were, I don't know how many, a dozen or more, 20 other political parties that ran in the election. They all got 1 or 2%, and so they can't even get in the parliament. So the atmosphere is all blocked for any new guy coming in. A new guy has no chance. There's no room for new people. So we got over 50% by Pashinyan, which is the majority of the parliament. And we have Kocharian and ARF, about 24%. and the Serge Sarkisian and the Parev party has another 5%. And then those three groups made the parliament. But the majority of the people are left out. The majority of the parties are left out. So not only it's bad, it's been bad the last 3 years, but it doesn't look there's any prospect for doing anything good in the future, as long as this man stays in power.
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better. So you said that, but I just don't know. Like, I think Armenia, the best they could do, they should join Russia and forget about it, because those people really doesn't know how to govern. Because how could you vote overwhelmingly to a man that for the fourth day he lied, for the fifth day he lied bigger one, and he went in there, he signed this document without consulting the parliament, his own parliament, without consulting the president, without consulting even his own foreign minister. And then on top of it, he gave Azerbaijan land that Azerbaijan didn't put their foot in there. I mean, all these things this guy did, and those people vote. I mean, there's something wrong with Armenian voters. Those people is not, don't blame Pashinyan. Somebody come from the street, take over the country, and the people, second time they vote, there is something wrong with people.
Well, as I said, I don't want to blame the people, because the people, there are various ways of manipulating the people and deceiving them and making them do what you want them to do. And Pashinyan is a master in that. He is very eloquent. He has a lot of good words in his mouth, and people believe him. And also, a lot of the people that voted for Pashinyan, a good chunk of those votes were not really for Pashinyan. They were votes against the previous leaders. So, and a lot of the votes that Kocharyan got are votes that are from people who were disenchanted, disappointed with Pashinyan, so they voted for Kocharyan. So people vote emotionally. They don't vote rationally. So you can't vote the people, because people, that's democracy. The majority of people vote and decide who to support. You can't blame them. It's the people who are manipulating, the leaders are manipulating the people.
But then if the people are smart, they cannot manipulate them. You saw in the United States, when they saw idiot Trump, the Republicans, they turned on him, their own party, But in Armenia, they just close their eyes and ears, and they have this myth. I don't know. Do you hear me good or not? Because my microphone is not working good.
Oh, I hear you fine, but Wally, we can't be too harsh on the people in Armenia, because, like you mentioned, the United States, even United States, after everything Trump did, all the crazy things he did for 4 years, drove all of us crazy, drove the whole world crazy. 71 million Americans end up voting for him.
Yeah, I know.
We're fortunate that 78 million voted for Biden. That's why Trump lost, even though he doesn't accept that either. But 71 million people were fooled by this guy. I was watching CNN today. Trump is in Arizona giving a speech. Thousands of his followers going crazy over him. They're in a big auditorium, no mask, no distancing, and there's a coronavirus spreading like mad. A lot of these people are going to die, unfortunately.
Okay.
But so they don't know what's good for them.
Okay. So it's really, for me, it's mind-boggling about this Armenian people. As you mentioned a few minutes ago, since 2015, every year I go twice in Armenia, and I spend thousands of dollars every year And I would go from villages to everywhere, interviewing parliamentarian, you name it, people I interview, I talk. Before Pashinyan, there was everybody you ask about Karabakh. Sometimes I ask them, I say, will you be able to keep Karabakh? They all said, Ampayman. When Pashinyan came, the Karabakh hatred started. In fact, I show you here, this you could see here. This is let me move it a little bit. On this street cross from Ramada Hotel, there are those nice fences. So they have this nice graphic. There was Armenian map, and Karabakh was beside it. Those, I assume, Pashinyan people came and scrabbled that Karabakh doesn't belong to Armenia. And so the hatred of Karabakh started. In fact, nowadays, most of those people, even they publicly say Karabakh belonged to Albania. They were not Armenian. So Pashinyan, you know what Pashinyan did? Pashinyan drew a red line between Armenia and Artsakh. But you see, he was successfully used this one word. In fact, I even asked him this when he came to Los Angeles, and he, just like military, how they put decoy. So he, instead of attacking Karabakh directly, he went after Kocharian and Serge Sarkisian because they were from Karabakh. So he sort of blackmailed them without even saying, I hate Karabakh or something. So he played very devil way of this whole things. But he was telling his people, Karabakh, it's a headache for us. So this was, he planned this.
Yeah, let me add a few facts about what you said. First of all, when Pashinyan came, before we get to Karabakh, he started bad-mouthing anybody who opposed him. Old-timers, new-timers, it doesn't matter who it was. Anybody who doesn't support him, he bad-mouthed. He separated the people into blacks and whites, not by color like in the United States, but the bad ones and the good ones. So he divided the Armenian society. Armenian society has never been this divided. There were divisions before, but he accentuated the divisions, made it worse. All you have to do is go on Facebook and you see what kind of language people use. It's so vile, so obscene, the language they use, that you're embarrassed to even read it. Yeah. And they threaten each other. They call each other names, most vicious names. Tavajan, traitor, and Turk, and all sorts of things, just because they disagree with each other. So it started by dividing Armenia. And then, coming to Karabakh, I've done some research on this. People are putting on websites and Facebook and talk shows copies of articles that Pashinyan wrote in his newspaper when he was an editor. And throughout the years, he's written several editorials, articles against Karabakh, saying that, what are we doing with Karabakh? Karabakh is a small part of Armenia. The small part cannot cause a headache to the big part, which is Armenia. So this is a running theme throughout his articles for years. And he also wrote a book, which was published a couple of years ago. And people are going through the book and reading excerpts from the book, where, again, he says the very bad things about Karabakh. And today I saw on Facebook, well, we have, just like all the other ministers, a very incompetent minister of economy who knows nothing about the economy. He studied math in college, and all he did was he ran a small delivery company, delivering sandwiches and products to people's homes. So this guy, Pashinyan, puts him as Minister of Economy, knowing nothing about economy. This guy, he spoke, I don't know, today or yesterday, and I read what he said. He said, Qarabağis, they're getting paid by Armenia as refugees and don't do any work, don't produce anything. I mean, he's just unnecessarily antagonizing Qarabağis. There's no such thing as Qarabağsi, Gümretsi, Ichevansi, Yerevansi. We're all Armenians. Even those who live in diaspora, we're all Armenians. We're members of the same family, of same nation. Nobody's doing a favor to us by dividing us into different sides. Already there's plenty of divisions in the diaspora in Armenia before Pashinyan came. He just came and made it worse. So that doesn't help either. On the top of everything else that he's doing wrong, he also divided the society. And he's also divided the diaspora. There are those who support him, not as many as 3 years ago, but there are some who support him. Again, prompted by their hatred for the previous leaders. And there are those who can't stand him in the diaspora. Same thing in Armenia.
You know, they talk about former government. There was 25 political party was running. Why couldn't they pick something else other than even the former government? But this is just an excuse. You know, they're giving former government, everything former government, you know. And so it's, when they're going to stop this former government? For 3 years, you know, he threw Kocharian in jail, from jail to jail. He changed the court. He changed the judges. He sent his thugs, took over the court. He could not prove anything. So where is this corruption? But the Armenian, they just, you know, like next things I have to show, he is the most corrupt leader Armenia ever had. He corrupted the minds of Armenians. This is worse than you steal money. He corrupted the minds. I talked to teenagers. I'm going to show that video next my conversation. He corrupted the mind of teenager school. I was there in Armenia. They call him Lost Bill or something. You know, I interview them. They worship him like a god. He corrupted entire nation mind. As you said, he never in Armenian history anybody was able to divide Armenian as much as this guy. He was against the diaspora. You know that. First thing he came, he closed Minister of Diaspora. You know, that was his first to show. He was against Karabakh. He was against Tashnak. He was against the church. You know, this guy is maniac. He has no economic background. He has no military background. He has no diplomatic, no negotiation. An idiot, a total idiot. And this is why, you know, you say, well, if people are stupid idiot, this is what they got. You are what you eat. This is what they got. And so what they're going to do? So this guy already was 3 years. Now he has a 5 year. Do you think Pashinyan ever going to leave? I don't think so. Democratically, Pashinyan will never leave. I guarantee you.
Yeah, I agree with you. But let me say a few things about corruption that's never said by anybody. I've been to Armenia 59 times over the years, in the last 30 years. And I saw everything happening in Armenia, just like a native. Was there corruption in the last 30 years before Pashinyan? Yes, there was. However, is there corruption now? Yes, there is. Even now there's corruption. Every day we see in the news, people arrested for bribery, for fraud, for theft, and other crimes, but corruption related. Now, in the past, when there were the previous leaders and everybody was talking about corruption, here's what I would say to people. I would say, yes, is there corruption? Yes, there is. We can't lie about it. However, Corruption was not the only problem Armenia had back then, and corruption is not the only problem Armenia has now. There are many other problems. How about running a country in a competent way? Competence is just as important as doing away with corruption. Because if you're not competent, you're going to ruin the country, which we see what he's done, ruin the country. So you can't just deal with corruption. This is like saying somebody has all sorts of diseases, heart problem, cancer, kidneys, et cetera, and you only focus on one of these problems and try to save the patient. The patient is going to die because the patient has so many diseases, not just one disease. So you have to treat all of these diseases to save the patient. You can't just focus on one area and ignore. If tomorrow a miracle happens and corruption goes to 0%, I can guarantee you from what I know about Armenia, Armenia's problems will continue just like before, even with zero corruption, because Armenia has many other problems. And as I said, most of all, because we don't have a leader, a competent leader who can deal with problems. No amount of money, no amount of allies, no amount of military leaders can help put the country straight if you don't have the top leader who is a one-man show. He runs everything. I mean, I'm ready to say that we haven't had a foreign minister for 2 months now, and let's just do away with the foreign minister, and Pashinyan would be prime minister and foreign minister.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
I mean, there are
nobody want this document, peace, whatever document. Nobody want to sign. That's why those ministers, they all resign, and eventually he has to be both, and he go and sign it just like he did the ceasefire.
Well, I tell you that I've been following closely the announcements by Aliyev about a peace treaty and Turkey, and they're trying to force Pashinyan into signing that. If he signs that, that'll be the end of Armenia.
Yes.
We will lose Armenia.
Yes.
Because a peace treaty, why do I say that for those who don't know the details? If you sign a peace treaty, you have to recognize the territorial integrity of the other country.
Yes.
We have problems on both sides of the border. Let's deal with Azerbaijan first, then we'll come to Turkey. Azerbaijan, we have Artsakh, the Republic of Artsakh, which is mostly occupied now by Azerbaijan. We have a portion that's still under Armenian control with the supervision of Russian peacekeepers. So what Aliyev wants for Pashinyan to sign a treaty that says that Armenia recognizes the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, which means the rest of Artsakh will go back to Azerbaijan.
Exactly.
Forever. And once you give it away, you're not going to get it back.
And also don't forget Nakhichevan.
Well, Nakhichevan is gone a long time ago. I don't blame.
At least there was always hope.
Yeah, well, I don't know how much hope there was, but
Yes.
Pashinyan has enough problems he's created.
Yeah.
I don't want to blame him for everything now.
No, that's nothing to do with Pashinyan. We're talking about territorial integrity.
Well, coming to territorial integrity, all our lives, we all are raised with talking about Western Armenia or occupied Armenia by Turkey. And one day, probably not very soon, but in the long distance now, as circumstances change in the world, there may be an opportunity to recover those lands. As I said, not in the near future. So Turkey wants Armenia to sign, like they tried 12 years ago to sign the protocols, which was forcing Armenia to sign a document recognizing the territory of Turkey.
Yeah.
Now, we can't sign that either because we have territorial demands from Turkey. We have territorial demands from Azerbaijan. We can't sign those things acknowledging the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan and Turkey. But that's what Aliyev and Erdogan are after. And because they won the war, and because they're threatening Armenia constantly, and because Pashinyan doesn't know what to do, doesn't listen to advice, doesn't have people knowledgeable around him, he's going to cave in. And that's going to be the end of Armenia.
It's probably going to be bloodshed in Armenia if he does that. Because I don't think most Armenians going to accept that.
No, that will be.
And this is what he's buying time. He even this snap election, he let the blood dry up. He let the tears dry up. Then he said I'm gonna resign. We do this election. So he has advisory, whether it's Russia or Turkey, but he's not doing it with his brain. Those old procedures, somebody is advising him.
Yeah, I don't know who's advising him. I'm not one who believes in conspiracy theories.
Well, so do I.
I don't want to say anything unless there's proof of who's doing what. I just attribute our bad situation to his incompetence. When you're incompetent, it's bad enough. You don't need anybody to tell you what to do against your own country's interest.
Yeah, but this is the consequence of incompetency.
You are your own worst enemy already.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing. Let me mention a current example that we're in the middle of. We had an Armenian ambassador in Washington.
Yeah.
His name is Varujan Nersesyan. I've known him for many years before he became ambassador. The guy is a very intelligent man, very capable man. And in the last, he's been there for 2 years. I've been following his meetings, his announcements, his speeches. He's developed tremendous contacts. It was very difficult during the Trump period to develop contacts for Armenia. But since Biden, who was a little more pro-Armenian than Trump, Varujan Nersesyan, the ambassador, has cultivated a lot of contacts in the State Department, in the House, in the Senate. So
he's replacing with the teacher.
What does Pashinyan do? He recalls the ambassador from Washington in the middle of his term. Usually their terms are 3 years. After serving 2 years, he interrupts his term and decided to replace him with this lady, Lilith Maguns, her name is. She's a member of the parliament from Pashinyan's party. And she knows nothing about diplomacy, nothing about foreign policy. All she knows is, supposedly she knows some English, and she's taught Pashinyan some English. But knowing English is not enough to be ambassador of Armenia in the most powerful country in the world. Every country in the world, even the smallest country, the most backward countries in the world, when they want to send an ambassador to Washington, they look and they pick from their circle the most competent, most knowledgeable ambassadors from what they have and send to Washington. Why? Because Washington is United States is a superpower, and a lot of things in the world decided by Washington. So what does Pashinyan do? Does the exact opposite. Takes a competent, capable person away and replaces him with an incompetent person. But we shouldn't be surprised, because incompetent people don't know any better. They appoint incompetent people like themselves to various ministry, ambassadors. He just appointed a couple of weeks ago a deputy foreign minister, somebody who knows nothing about foreign ministry, just because he is from Pashinyan's party. Yeah. And the word is that pretty soon he's going to raise him to promote him to become foreign minister. Yeah. So now we're going to have a foreign minister who knows nothing about foreign policy. Hundreds of people work there. not only the foreign minister resigned, I must also add, there were 4 deputy foreign ministers. They also resigned. So there's nobody running except this new guy now for 2 weeks. It's got to be a mess. It's going to be a disaster. The blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
How can we expect anything positive to come out of this?
Yeah. I honestly, I don't know. We could talk more. So we need to make it this weekly we talk, because I just wanted to start this, but there is so much we could talk about this whole things, especially from Turkey's side. How Turkey, I have some stuff I was going to show you, but my microphone doesn't work good. Like how Turkey is encouraging Pashinyan to stay away from diaspora. In fact, bluntly, their newspaper, I don't know if you read it, it's saying Pashinyan has to stay away from the foreign people. And in one place, I don't know, let me see if it works. You could see it. I hope it doesn't cut you off. So this is their, I don't know, do you see it?
Yeah, I read it.
It says, as Turkish officials say, Armenian should avoid relying on the foreigners. And when you go way in the bottom, they describe it as a diaspora. So they're working very hard, the Turks, to convince Pashinyan to stay away from the diaspora. If you go in the bottom, you could see that. Specifically, they mentioned diaspora.
Yeah, well, let me say, just to be completely truthful, this is not a new Turkish policy.
No.
For ever since Armenia became independent for 30 years, the Turks have always badmouthed diaspora, saying that diaspora Armenians are radicals, and they're making decisions for Armenia. Of course, the Turks are wrong. The diaspora Armenians not only don't make any decision for Armenia, they're not able to make any decision because we don't even have a vote in Armenia. And non-Armenian citizens, by law, are prevented from assuming any high-ranking position unless they become Armenian citizens and live there for a number of years.
Yeah.
So the Turks are lying. What the Turks are really saying in simple language, that they don't like any Armenian, whether they're in Armenia or in diaspora, who defends Armenia's national interests, who's an Armenian nationalist. They're against Armenian nationalism. They're against Armenians who demand their rights, their territories. Yeah. They are for Armenians who go along with them and make concessions to them. I remember 10 years ago when Ahmet Davutoglu was the foreign minister of Turkey, very competent guy and very clever guy. He sent a memorandum to all Turkish ambassadors around the world that said the following. I got my hands on one of these, on a copy. He instructed his ambassadors in their countries, various countries, to develop relations with these are his words, he called them soft Armenians. He says, invite soft Armenians to your events. Go to the events organized by soft Armenians. Establish good relations with them.
They did. Remember, they sent a group of people came here. They were in UC Irvine.
That's right.
I went there and I interviewed some of them. Those were the soft.
Well, they went beyond just sending people here. They also told a whole bunch of Armenians, which I will not name them. The Turkish leader invited them, a plane load of Armenians, to Turkey to wine and dine them, and to make them say compromising things about our demands. And it took a lot of effort on my part to talk to all these people and tell them not to go, not to fall for the Turkish tricks. So Turks have been against diaspora. I mean, they're not just against diaspora, as I said, because of diaspora has a lot of nationalism. They're also against Hayasansis in Armenia who are nationalistic, and who want to defend our Armenian rights. Yeah. They're against those also. So bad-mouthing the diaspora, basically.
Yeah. Okay. I thank you very much for coming. Let's do this next either Monday or Tuesday. If you want to just, before we close in, elaborate a little bit on your article we just published, a little bit on that, just 5 minutes.
Okay, well, there are a lot of diplomatic secrets in the various countries' archives that we don't know anything about unless one day it comes out. Either it's leaked out, or like the United States has a policy where after 25 years, they disclose partially, not fully, partially their documents in their archives. So in year 2000, on the eve of the vote on the Armenian genocide in the House, we had the Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert, who came to Glendale trying to support a Republican congressman, Jim Rogan, told the Armenians, vote for Rogan, he's your man. Because of him, I'm gonna bring the Armenian genocide for a vote in the House. So we were all very excited, very happy. He went back to Washington. Immediately at the time, it was President Clinton and Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. Yeah. They started pressuring Hastert, the speaker. They started pressuring the minority leader, Dick Gephardt. The Madeleine Albright wrote letters to both of the House leaders. The Secretary of Defense, William Cohen, wrote letters to the two leaders in the House. The Turkish lobbies, who are paid millions to lobby for Turkey, they contacted all the congressmen, telling them not to vote. And Turkey itself, Turkish leaders started as their usual threatening United States that if you recognize the genocide, we're going to do this, we're going to close down the Incirlik airport, we're going to cut off our trade and our military, our political ties. So, like until recently, when Biden finally recognized it, Clinton and all the other presidents before him and after him, they all got scared, believing those empty Turkish bluffs of threats. So they did what the Turks told them to do, try to oppose the resolutions, stop the vote, and don't let it pass. So on top of doing all this, they did something even more immoral in my book. They called the foreign minister of Armenia, Vartan Oskanian, and the president of Armenia, Robert Kocharian, and tried to pressure them into agreeing to not to support the genocide resolution in the House. So the document that recently the State Department declassified from a secret category to a public category, it's on the State Department website now, this document, I got my hands on over the weekend and I read it. I was so stunned and so angry at what they tried to do. They're trying to tell the foreign minister and the president of Armenia, go along with Turkish efforts and US efforts to deny the genocide, not to allow the genocide to be recognized. This is the same thing as somebody who is stabbed or shot by a murderer. They go to the victim and say, please defend the murderer who tried to shoot you and try to stab you. Or, as I said in my column, it's like calling Israeli leaders and telling them, oh, there's a resolution in Congress to recognize the Holocaust. Please tell the congressmen and senators not to recognize it. Nobody in their right mind would do such a thing in terms of the Holocaust and Israel. Why should they get away with doing this for Armenia? And so they pressured Hastert, and right before the vote in October 2000, President Clinton wrote a very strongly worded letter saying, if you allow this vote to go forward, all hell will break loose, the world will come to an end. and there are going to be terrorism in the Middle East. The Turks will close down the Incirlik airport, etc. So Hastert, who we found out later on was getting over $500,000 in cash in brown bags illegally from Turkish citizens for his re-election, and doing a lot of other bad things for which he ended up going to jail for sexual molestation and other things. And Hastert used Clinton's letter as an excuse for pulling the resolution from the vote, did not allow the vote. So the resolution did not pass. So they succeeded in their evil scheme to prevent the adoption of the resolution by the House. Biden came to power in April 24, as we know. Biden finally recognized it. And again, even today, even before April 24, before Biden, Turks again made a lot of threats, and that all the previous presidents believed those threats, and they didn't go forward. But Biden, who knows Erdogan very well and hates him, and knows the empty Turkish threats, he didn't believe anything they said. He went ahead. Not only he issued the statement on April 24, one day before, April 23, he called Erdogan and told him, I want you to know, tomorrow I'm going to issue a statement on recognizing the Armenian genocide. And this, to make it worse, after November 3rd, when Biden was elected president, Erdogan had sent a message congratulating him and saying that I want to talk to you on the phone. Biden called many other leaders in the world,
He didn't call him back,
but did not call Erdogan. The first time since November 3, Biden called Erdogan on April 23rd to tell him that I'm recognizing the Armenian genocide.
Yeah.
So of course, Erdogan acted like he was angry. He was, acting in front of his public to show that he is defending the interests of Turkey. He went on the air for 1 hour and started making all sorts of threats. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that to the United States. How dare they? This is wrong, and there's no genocide, all sorts of things.
Yeah. And
then there was a NATO meeting in Brussels, and Biden and Erdogan, Biden had told Erdogan, I'm going to meet with you on that occasion on the sidelines of the meeting. They met. Before going to meeting, Erdogan again, he announced publicly several times, when I see Biden, I'm going to tell him off. I'm going to tell him how wrong he was to recognize genocide. He shouldn't have done that. We are allies, NATO allies. How can you do this? I'm going to use some very harsh words to tell him. So finally the day came, they met, the two of them. And when the meeting was over, Erdogan gave a press conference. The press immediately asked him, what did you tell Biden about the genocide? Erdogan did not say a word about the genocide to Biden. Even worse, he told the Turkish press, I'm going to use his words. He said, thank God the genocide issue did not come up. I mean, this man is crazy. He's the one who's supposed to bring it up, and he promised he will bring it up. Now he's saying, thank God it didn't come up.
Yeah.
So that's what I wrote about today.
Yeah, it's a great article. I think everybody should go and read it. It's out there in our website, Harut website, all over the place. Normally, everybody publishes stuff. Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much. We'll talk to you next week. We'll arrange it maybe either Monday or Tuesday. There are other things more important today. I don't want to talk too much because I think I have a problem with my microphone. And thank you very much, and have a good night. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay.